Here for the Daniel and Sulaimaan show. I've renamed it now. That's it now. We're renaming it officially. But before we start, I just want to say one thing, Sulaimaan. Who won the go-karting?
Who won the go-karting? Well, there were three races, right? I think, was it the first one I came, had the quickest time?
You did have the quickest time. Only because you picked up the wrong piece of paper.
Yeah, I picked up the wrong piece of paper thinking I was slowest, but I was still happy with the time. Like,
you were good.
okay,
That's a
was
good time.
Then it realised I had the wrong paper and I was faster. And then I think the second one, you won.
Yep.
And then the third one,
Total annihilation.
I think you just about nipped it.
Total annihilation. That was a good time. That was good. I haven't gone go-karting for a while.
That was amazing to knock a second
and a half.
You knocked a second and a half at the time.
Yeah, because my first one was 24.9, and ended up at 23.4.
Yeah, and then my first one was 24.8. No, 24.4.
Yes, yeah.
And then the second one, the final one was 23.8. Mm-hmm. So that's like 3/4 of a second.
Yeah, it was good. It was fun. It was very fun. I enjoyed that.
It was
Should
good.
do it again.
Good.
And I was thinking just before we went on the show, you know how we've been playing the Quran challenge game?
Yes.
I'm thinking we should get people on here to do that game.
Because
when I do that game, it's like, it's actually interesting how much knowledge you have of certain areas and some that you don't on certain other areas. So it's something we should do in the future.
Yeah, man, definitely.
But yeah, that was a good time. So we're here again, have another chat, general chit chat. So last week I had Brother Hamza on the show. That was interesting. That was.
MashaAllah.
He's a white revert Muslim for about 10 years, and we kind of diverted completely because we were speaking about racism. Because he mentioned something about how being a white guy and white supremacy and all that, he didn't experience any of that until he became a Muslim. And he said one of his friends, he was working in a shop at the time with a black woman.
Yes.
And he had an experience on a bus where no one was sitting next to him and things like that. And then someone was apparently shouting something about the Muslims this, the Muslims that. And anyway, and then he's turned to the black woman and told her about the story because he was quite upset about it. And she was just like, well, welcome to our world.
Yeah. So he was on the bus and he was being abused by another white person.
Yeah. So people just abusing him.
And this is the thing that people often will say, I kind of sympathise, I understand, I have an understanding of racism and it's not nice, but until you've actually experienced it, you really don't know the effect it has. And typically, if you're white, you generally don't experience racism or prejudice at the level that black people or minority ethnic communities do. So when we spoke about this the other day and you told me, it was, again, it's one of those things where I thought, do you know what? It's unfortunate that it happens.
Yeah.
But I think you have to talk about these things because it draws people's attention to a lot of injustices that just, often African Caribbean people will just put up with, tolerate, bite their tongues. We're kind of used to this, unfortunately. And one of the phrases I've said, just like this, the black lady said to him, which was, welcome to our kind of world type thing. When I became Muslim or should I say, when I became Muslim from 1991 to 2001, any people I encountered who wanted to know something about Islam came as blank sheets of paper. They would see me, they would either know I was Muslim or see I was dressed like a Muslim or knew from family or friends, and they would say, "Oh, are you Muslim?" And I would say yes, and they'd have questions. So tell me about Islam and what is it and what do you believe? They had no clue. But ever since kind of 9/11, up until the present day, you've had a decade at least of headlines and other opinions and about Islam, to the extent when you hear the word Islam or Muslim, either on the news channel or in a newspaper, you assume most people associate the next word to follow as a negative one.
Yeah.
So because of all the Islamophobia and prejudice and hatred that's been coming towards people who maybe look like Muslims or are Muslims, I had to say to my friends a couple of years ago, Pakistani friends, Arab friends, but mainly Pakistani friends that I play football with, Pakistani, Bangladeshi, when they complained about boy, you know, when you walk out there, there's a lot of hostility now towards us, and people are talking about your beard, if you wear the hat, if you dress like a Muslim. They're now in the spotlight. Yeah? And I've kind of said to them, humorously, do you feel black now? I've literally said to them, do you feel black now? Because, and they get it. They understand exactly what I mean.
Yeah.
Because what I'm saying to them is, dude, for the last, I don't know how many decades I've been alive, this has been our experience on a weekly basis. If you're fortunate, lucky, we don't believe in luck, but if you're fortunate, maybe you won't get that experience for a few months, maybe even a few years. But even I've had the experience of racism, not necessarily because of my Islamic identity, but literally because of my black identity.
Yeah.
That was just recently. But this is something that black people we've just developed a thick skin and learnt to live with it. And we don't bother complaining because nothing really gets done or changes. There's too many people for us to try and change all their minds.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was saying. There's so many different things that...
Yeah.
There's different factors that come into it.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like a way of life. It's sad because you don't think about the things consciously anymore. It's kind of just like, we have to deal with these things and that's it.
It's only when it's blatantly done in my face that I'm aware that I can't ignore it.
Yeah.
And it kind of hits home that, oh gosh, another racist who actually wants to show me they're racist. You see what I'm saying? So I had an experience. What was it that happened the other day? I mean, I don't dwell on these things, which is why I'm trying to remember, kind of recall, what was it that happened? But I had an experience the other day. I mean, maybe I can't remember it right now because, like I said, this was blatantly racist. And some people would think, why didn't you report it to the police? Why didn't you, you must be devastated. You kind of just...
Yeah, just literally brush it off.
You just Jay-Z.
Yeah, literally.
You know what I'm saying? Because if you hold on to that stuff, it will change how you are as a person. You'll become very bitter. You'll become very maybe pessimistic about the world. And as Muslims, we're not meant to be pessimistic. We're meant to be people who are optimists. We always believe that there's a way out. There's a solution. There's light at the end of the tunnel. So we just keep going, keep it moving, Yeah. But if I remember it, I'll mention it.
Okay, good. And one thing we haven't mentioned in any of these shows, which I wanted to ask, because I did ask it off the cuff, off the record, but people need to hear.
Indeed.
So your name now, Sulaimaan.
Indeed.
Yeah. Before that,
yes.
What was your name?
Before that, my name was Charles
Xavier.
Professor X. So kind of the story behind how I got my name. And first of all, I want to kind of start by, once again, showing kind of gratitude to my mother who's no longer with us, or to both my parents actually, for the insightfulness and the intelligence that they had in how they raised their children, in how even down to how our parents named us. So I come from a family of 8 kids, and I'm number 7, second youngest. And most typically African Caribbean families, they have names like Winston, Leroy, blah, blah, blah. But my mum, coming from the Caribbean, coming to the UK when, again, touching on that whole prejudice, skin colour divide, when that was prevalent, you had the NF. Before you had the BNP, you had the NF, the National Front.
Yeah.
So, and these guys would walk around visibly and they would hate black people and they would literally come to your face, spit on you. I didn't get that experience because I was a baby, but my parents and older brothers lived through that, the kind of 70s. So my mum was intelligent in how she named us because she obviously understood that there will be barriers that we are going to come up against. And some of them might be physical barriers, and maybe we can deal with that ourselves. But many of them are going to be kind of social, economic barriers where we'll be disadvantaged in some way for moving forward, advancing. So if you listen to the names she gave all of us, so I have a younger brother, he's called Mark.
Okay.
Then I was called Charles. I have a brother called Thomas, or we call him Tom. Me and him are tight like this. And then I have a brother called Mitchell. then there's Nicholas or Nicky, then there's David, Bernice, Clifton. If you heard those names or saw them written down, you would assume, that sounds like a bunch of white guys.
Yeah, it's just a white family.
Yeah, white family, bunch of English people. And that was the intelligence of my mum. You know, she realised that what you are called and how people perceive you from the very beginning, just your name, in the society we live in, unfortunately will make a difference.
Yes, has an impact.
Yes. And so I've got to give you every head start I can and help you overcome obstacles before they've even become obstacles.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so in terms of the changing of my name, I remember I've been Muslim for maybe a couple of weeks, and I'm going to the mosque as I had been going leading up to me becoming a Muslim. And we're praying and everything. And after me and the brothers, because there was a small handful of us who actually became Muslim, African Caribbean, there was 3 of us. And so we would pray in the rows. After the prayers finished, we'd go and sit at the back and we'd do our little dhikr on our fingers. And we'd just sit down and talk and what we're going to do next and where we're going to go after this. And what happened was people would always come up to me and say, who saw me become Muslim, who knew I was now a Muslim, who'd heard about me and say, oh brother, you know, when are you going to choose a name? And I'd kind of be like, I don't really know. It's not a priority for me right now. I'm just so overwhelmed and just, you know, there's so much Islam to explore. So every couple of weeks, brother, a different person, brother, when are you gonna? And I remember one day I was making wudu. It must have been maybe on a weekend, maybe asr time, duha time. I'm making wudu. I'm sat on one of the little, you know, seats, and a brother came through and he said the same thing. Brother, different brother this time. Brother, when are you gonna choose a name? And I was kind of like, well, I would prefer someone who has a good knowledge of names. Maybe if someone observed me for a while, and then maybe if they then chose a couple of names that they felt suited my character, suited who I was. Because I felt it was a little bit, my point of view, I felt it was a little bit kind of, I don't know, a little bit arrogant for me to choose a name because I might have gone for a name like Assad or Lion or, you know, that type of thing.
Yeah, to be fair, no one ever chooses their own name, do they?
So I kind of said, look, I would prefer someone who kind of knows names to just, you know, observe me for a while and maybe choose a couple of names that he or she thinks would suit. And that's all I said. And I said that, you know, just in answer to this person. Because I was being offered, you know, nice names, but they tended to revolve around the name Bilal.
Okay.
And don't get me wrong, alhamdulillah, mashallah, one of the people promised Jannah, so that's not a name to scoff at, exactly. But I just felt there was this kind of a recurring theme of Bilal, and I understand they're saying it from the point of view of, well, Bilal was black, he was African, so this is a fantastic name for you. But I know there were other names. So maybe another week went by. As usual, we finished our prayer in the rows. We've gone and sat at the back. There's about half a dozen of us sitting at the back doing our dhikr. And a black brother, much older than us, he'd become Muslim a while ago. He was one of the first black people in that entire kind of, not just our town, but that region to become Muslim. Wow. So he was well known, well respected, and he was kind of deep into his Islam, and he had children, so we were young, you know. Anyway, he came into the masjid. We knew who he was. We'd given him salam before. He came into the masjid. He must have finished his prayer, and he came over, and he gave salam to each of us from the right hand side, and then I think I was the last person he gave salam to. Gave salam, walaikum salam, and then he just gave me this piece of paper, and I just took it. I think he said something like, "For you." I just took it, and then he just gave us salam and left. So I opened the paper up, and wallahi, it had this name on it in English, Sulaimaan. And I don't know about other people when something happens and everything just falls into place, and you see something and you just know, that's my name, that's me. Because it wasn't that I was yet Sulaimaan, but I recognised it was a name I had to live up to.
Yeah.
because coming from a Christian background, my family going to church, Sunday school, choir, I knew about Sulaimaan and all the stories about Sulaimaan alayhi salam and Dawood and everyone, Solomon and David.
Yeah.
So I knew about all those. So I knew Solomon was known for his wisdom. Sulaimaan was known for his wisdom. That's one of the blessings that Allah gave him.
Yeah.
That He made him wise, and as well as many other things. So for me, that name Sulaimaan, it was like, whoa, that's a name that you need to kind of live up to.
Yeah.
And I just felt that's it. That's what human being doesn't want to be intelligent.
Yeah.
Doesn't want to be wise. And I just thought, and also there's an honour that came with that
that's
name.
the thing, isn't it? You carry something.
Yeah, it was like, wow.
It's like an aura with the name.
So the fact that he saw something even remotely shadowing that name, Sulaimaan, and he felt, I see
he's
this.
worthy.
I was like, alhamdulillah. So that's how I got my name.
Okay.
And alhamdulillah, all of my brothers, they call me Sulaimaan.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, they call me Sulaimaan.
Yeah.
I didn't impose it. I just said, this is the name I'm going to use from now when I'm choosing. But I said to them, listen, if you still want to call me Charles or whatever, it's no problem. It's cool. Because I actually love both names.
Yeah.
I love the name my mum gave me because of the thought that she put into it and the meaning and the importance that it must have had to her. And I also love my new Islamic name, Sulaimaan. So for me, sometimes I bump into people and my old school friends and they say, oh, should I call you Sulaimaan? I say, listen, I like both names, so you can use whichever you want.
Which one you want.
It's cool.
That's
You
good.
know what I'm saying? It's cool with me, you know?
That's interesting, because with my dad, I know a lot of his brothers and his sisters still call him Tennessee. Still
okay.
10
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah,
And I know
yeah,
my mum
yeah.
still calls my dad 10.
Well, interestingly, when my mum was still alive, my mum would always still call me by the name she gave me, which I was cool with because, well, you have to, you're my mum. You have the right at the end of the day. So, the one thing I wouldn't have done is try to act kind of disrespectfully and been like, no, my name is this. Could you call me this? No. You can call me whatever you like. You know what I'm saying? And I'll be happy.
Yeah.
Full stop. So yeah, that's how the name
That's
came.
interesting. That's good. Like Hamza last week, he was saying it's kind of a similar thing where he was like praying, and he just threw a name, and he looked up, and then there was books on the shelf, and then written on there was Hamza. But that's the short story of it. It was ridiculous, and he was just like, "This is." He said he had to take it. So all these different signs. So when I release that one, you can listen to it. It's ridiculous.
Mashallah.
But one thing he mentioned as well, he said he wouldn't recommend to anyone now for them to change their names. So like me, when I was little, I remember being 8 years old and I wanted to change my name to Kareem. Yeah, my dad was Muhammad Abdul Kareem, and I was Raheem, sorry, and I wanted to be Muhammad Abdul Kareem. And then for a while in school, I was saying, yeah, my name's Kareem now. Just walking on, yeah, it's Kareem. But I've never legally changed it. But that's a name that I always identify by. If someone says to me, oh, did you ever choose an Islamic name? And it's like, yeah, it's Kareem. But it wasn't kind of like this is it, set in stone. But that's what I did.
You've just reminded me of something. At some point in my late teenage years, before I was a Muslim, I must have read a Malcolm X book and taken it upon myself to just go and find out and read one. And I remember I had a notebook, like a diary type thing that I would write stuff in, appointments and whatever. And I'm only kind of in my late teens. And I remember after reading about Malcolm X, and I'm trying to remember where this kind of fits into my kind of transition journey, whether this was I'm just a young black kid and I just read a book about Malcolm X, or whether it was during that period where I began to actively look for something to change my lifestyle.
Yeah.
But I remember writing in the diary that I had, Charles X. And the thing is, I found the diary years later. Because I used to keep certain things. I found it years that I remember going through it and being like, oh, it's in my old diary. And seeing my writing in it, Charles X. I also remember that after reading his biography, because when the Malcolm X film came out starring Denzel Washington, we were already Muslims. because we went to the cinema, watched the movie, and then after the cinema we came straight outside, because this is our neighbourhood, our city, our town, and there are only about 2 cinemas anyway. This was the main one in the city centre. After watching the film, me and a handful of Muslims at the time, the African Caribbean brothers, we came outside, we had a plan to hand out leaflets about Islam. Because no one really understood Islam, but they'd seen us young men becoming Muslims. And then that Malcolm X film, it was such a positive thing in our town that Islam kind of landed even more, not just with our presence, but that film kind of just took it into everyone's houses. But I remember after learning or reading about Malcolm X's biography, or reading about him, not only did I start writing Charles X, I also started going through the dictionary. Because when Malcolm X was in Malcolm X was in prison, or before he became Malcolm X, he started going through the dictionary. And he literally went through the entire dictionary and just started to re-educate himself. And when I learned that he did that, I was like, whoa. Because I'd never met someone or heard of anyone who used a dictionary as like a book of education. Yeah. Usually you just refer to it when you stuck on a spelling. He went through it and he was learning what that word meant, everything. And I remember doing the same thing. I had a book, I had a notepad, and I was literally, the words that I obviously knew, I didn't bother with those. But anything I wasn't sure from A right through, I started going through it. And literally going, I mean, one of the words was archaic.
Yeah.
I'd never really used that words in my circle before. A bunch of young black guys into hip hop and b-boy and whatever, football. So there's no need for us to know a word like, oh yes, it was very archaic, that goal you scored. It was very, no, it wasn't. Yeah. So, but words like that, archaic. Wow, what does that mean? Oh, there's another word. Oh gosh, what is it? Sagacious.
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 I've never heard that word in my life.
It basically means to be wise. To
Sagacious.
Be wise.
Okay.
Yeah. Wise. It means to be wise. And when I remember reading it and thinking, damn, that's a heavy word. Yeah. But sometimes the meaning behind them is quite simple. But there's just more complicated ways of... It's like a higher form of language, I guess, you know? So you could have just said, oh, he's very wise, very smart. Mm-hmm. But some people are going, very sagacious.
That puts a completely different spin on the
like,
conversation.
Hold on, can you translate that?
Translate that stop, I can't speak to you anymore because clearly you're way too educated. I'm just going to go over here with the plebs.
Yeah, so he inspired me to realise, well, if a black guy in America in prison could do that, I'm free and I could do that. And I remember going and buying my first dictionary in order to do this. I bought an Oxford Encyclopedic English Dictionary, a thumbnail version. Mm-hmm. So it's literally each letter is thumbnailed and cut out. So you put your finger in, turn the page, and you're on A, you're on F, you're on G. And literally I was going through that. And it was my first kind of investment in what I would call a symbol of kind of learning. Because we had little dictionaries, in the house. But nothing, you know what I'm saying? Nothing
substantial.
Yeah, it was substantial. So... yeah, that for me, just having this conversation has just reminded me of those things. Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And it's just like, wow.
That's cool.
You know?
That's actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
Learning a dictionary. Yeah. Because there are words that when you hear people saying words and you're thinking, I don't want to say anything.
Yeah.
I'll just pretend I know what they're on about. And then maybe later I'll go back to it in a third and be like, oh, okay, that's what that means. Because I do have one of my friends from school, Radzi, his name is. And he presents the BBC now. Yeah, so he's good. He's doing well, and he's busy. He's doing the snooker at the moment. I was watching. I was thinking, this guy's everywhere. He's just not speaking to him the other day, and his vocabulary has always been good.
Yes.
And I remember being on the phone to him one of the days, and he was talking, and you'd hear him say a word, and it's something that you've heard before a while ago, but you can't remember what the kind of word was. But then as he continues speaking, you understand the context of it, and you're like,
yes,
okay. But I won't refer back to that. Yeah, I'll just be like, I remember what you're saying now, so that's good. But that's good. So, I mean, yeah, interesting. Charles, Sulaimaan, Kareem. I always think to myself, should I change my name?
Yes, you were saying, yeah.
People I don't know now. My name now, I can go anywhere. Daniel Brown. Yeah. If I was to change it to Muhammad Abdul Kareem, would would that restrict me? Don't know.
I was reading something, and we may have to continue this after the break. But I
Yeah.
was reading something, and it was some research that was done. It was not long ago, maybe the last 12 months, and it was to do with application forms and names, and that there seems to be an association when they hear a name. It was actually I think it was like a blind test actually that they did.
Okay.
Where they had certain names and they read them out to people, and they asked them to describe. Actually, it was to do with unconscious bias.
Okay.
And they asked them, here are the names, describe the person. So when you hear Jim Jones, what do you see?
Oh, I see.
And when you hear, Jennifer, whatever, what do you see? And when you hear, Hussein, blah, 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 what's your image?
We'll speak about that afterwards then. That'll be a good
Indeed.
one. We'll talk about. So yeah, see everyone again after the break. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Salam.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We're back again.
Assalamu wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Yep, second half of the show.
Indeed.
And I think we stopped on names. Yes.
Indeed.
Names. You're going to mention something about that. I can't remember what we're talking about now, which is very strange because basically during the break we had a completely different off topic. That's why we were talking about something that happened to you on the train with some people asking why we pray.
Yes.
Which is interesting because that's a good question for people. And it's something that we referred to back on one of our series that we were doing. And a difference between someone finding... It is a question, but one of my best friends, he said to me, whilst we were doing the show, he said, I can understand about how drinking alcohol and taking drugs and all these kind of things are not good, but that's what makes... they enjoy doing it. Mm-hmm. But he says, how do you make Islam sound to someone who does that to be something that is enjoyable? Yeah.
Right. This is interesting because I've thought about this a lot. And when I first became Muslim, I used to spend a lot of time with the brother who invited me to the mosque that day and the other brother who was in the mosque with him, both African Caribbean brothers. So I would hang out with that one brother quite a lot, the one who I cut off his dreads and everything. Within about a year, a few more people that we knew, African Caribbean, had also become Muslim. And within 2 or 3 years, there was a little group of us. There was probably about 8 of us. And maybe 4 or 5, in fact, about 10 of us, about 5 of us were African Caribbean, all from my neighbourhood. Similar schools, families knew each other, went to the same church. And then there were a handful of like Asian, Pakistani brothers who would come back to the religion. And we're all young. We're all like 19, 20, 21, 22, all young. We used to walk from our end of the town through the city centre to the other end of the town where the big mosque that I was invited to that first time. So we would always go to that mosque, had a nice vibe about it. There was a smaller house mosque near us, but it was only open at prayer times.
Okay.
So we would make a bit of a journey of it. So we were all well known. All of us, the black brothers and those Asian brothers, we were all well known in our own peer groups, our own neighbourhoods. People knew our families, everything, especially the black brothers. This is the thing that hit me. It didn't hit me until after years later. We were people that used to indulge in all those types of practices, drinking, smoking, all the things that you think as a young man or a young person contain happiness.
Yeah.
We gave that all up. You're talking about people who were 20 years old, just in their prime, 20, 21. We gave up everything. Gave up drink, smoke, the women, the nightclubs. We stopped it all. But yet, when we walked as a group down that main road of our city, and we walked past through the neighbourhoods where we grew up, went shopping, still went shopping, we would still talk to all the people we knew who would hang out, neighbours, people with businesses. They'd all see us and want to ask us questions about Islam. Mm-hmm. But what I realised was what was attractive about us was we weren't drinking, we weren't smoking, we weren't doing all that stuff that you meant to get your buzz and your high from, your happiness from, but yet we still look happy and high.
Yeah.
And I can imagine to those, I've imagined since that, to the people who knew us and knew who we were and we're fun-loving and we're cool, we were still fun-loving. I think we were even more fun-loving and cool. But it wasn't fueled or powered or reliant on drink anymore. So for people seeing us, they must have thought, what are these dudes on?
How does it happen?
How can they still be so happy and buzzing and attractive and they're not doing any of the things that you need to do to look happy and attractive? And what have they got? What are they on? And I think it was that same experience I had when my guy said, cut my dreadlocks off. I'm like, what? What do you mean? If dreadlocks is the pinnacle of your kind of black manliness, you've arrived. I'm like a lion, and this is my mane.
Yeah.
So to cut them off, I'm kind of like, where's this dude's head's at? Because you're going backward if you cut this off. You're losing your identity. Mm-hmm. So I think people seeing us and the question about, why do you pray and how do you make Islam look attractive? I genuinely think if you practice Islam from your heart and on your limbs, and you understand, you learn a little bit, you understand it, you practice it. Like the Sahaba, they would learn 10 ayah, they would understand it, practice it, then move on to 10 more. It wasn't just a reading competition. I finished the Quran. You know what I'm saying? So I think because of the way we were, we wanted that knowledge because we didn't have it. So when we came across it and it just started to make everything make sense, it was like we couldn't get enough. So I don't think we had to try to make Islam look good or make Islam look popular or make Islam look cool. It was. Yeah. It still is. And I think because we were those young men and we were from that kind of cool era, then when we became Muslim, it didn't take over our characters and Islam didn't erase our personalities. Mm-hmm. It didn't. So I wasn't a happy-go-lucky guy. I became Muslim, and then I'm kind of like,
yeah,
I'm just all serious and monk-like. No, yeah. I still had my personality. We still spoke to people. We still cracked jokes. We still played football with the local dudes. Mm-hmm. We still rode mountain bikes. We still drove cars. We still did all of that, but we didn't have to have anything unnatural or false or to do it.
Yeah,
man-made.
You're not having to chase that high, are you, anymore?
And I remember I was working in a children's home, and one of the young guys living there, his name was, actually, weirdly enough, his name was Daniel. And I remember we were in the kitchen, and the young people get involved in preparing dinner. He was about 15 years old. He was from London. And I remember it was me and him in the kitchen, and I just finished praying. I was in the kitchen, I went to pray, then I came back. And I'm helping him do the peeled potatoes or whatever it is. And he turned around and he says to me, he says, Sulaimaan. I said, yeah. He said, you know you pray? I said, yeah. And listen to the intelligent question.
Yeah.
Does it work? I'd never ever heard anyone talk about the prayer in that way. As a functioning thing. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we look at the prayer as something we do.
Yeah.
Because it's an obligation. Or, oh my God, Maghrib's going to end. Let me pray. Mm-hmm. So we're kind of getting it done. He looked at it from a young child's point of view, which was, if you're doing something, then...
what's the outcome?
What's the point?
Yeah.
Is there an outcome? Does it work? Because when I go to the gym and I push weights, it works. Mm-hmm. So, does it work? And I remember pausing and thinking about his question and thinking, wow, that's a brilliantly innocent question. And I remember thinking, does it work? Has it worked? And I was like, yes, it has. Because without that prayer, if you'd kept me with the people I was in and the environment I was in, without that prayer and the learning that we were doing, which then kind of went into that prayer, it solidified what we were learning. And then the prayer was a kind of...
It's a reinforcement,
it's like a reinforcement, like an anchor of, I'm praying now.
Yeah.
Because... And I remember saying to him, yes, it does. Yeah, it does. It does work.
Yeah.
It does work. Because I pray because of what I know and understand.
Exactly.
So it's like a loop.
Yeah.
But it was a very intelligent question from a 15-year-old. Does it work?
And to be able to answer the question in the right way as well. Because for someone like him looking at it, thinking, it depends what his idea of does it work is.
Yes.
Yeah. So on one hand, it could be, does it work? Is your life better?
Yes.
Or does it work? Have you got more materialistic things? Yeah. Yes. But that's the thing. So like when I think of praying and how it works, it's like I said, it's that positive reinforcement. And here's the thing, right? If you're ever going to learn something, you don't just learn it once, do you? You don't. If you say, "Oh, I'm going to suddenly become a mathematician," you don't look at one sum and go, "That's it, done." Yeah. You're constantly reminding yourself of it, because that's the thing you need to do. Or when like your daughter's going to do an accountancy, she's constantly learning that for that reason. Yes. And it's the same with our faith. If we don't pray, and I thought about this, I said, well, if Muslims didn't need to pray, we didn't pray, didn't need to do dhikr, you didn't have to do any remembrance, then you forget what it is that you're believing in. So it's kind of like it's a very clever, it's obviously perfect, way for us to make sure we remember why we're here. Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing for me. Every time you're going through your day and you're like, right, okay, get up, it's Fajr time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the start of the day. Then it's,
Yeah.
you're going through your day, then it's Dhuhr. You're like, okay, I'm remembering.
Yeah.
And then anything that generally happens, good or bad, you're always like, Alhamdulillah.
And also, added to that, if there were no actions required in Islam, because there are some Muslims that say, Islam is in your heart. Islam is in your heart. Your faith, your religion is in your heart. But I understand where they're coming from.
Yeah, but the Quran doesn't say that, does it?
But if Islam was just in your heart, brother, then what was the purpose of the Prophet teaching us about fasting, praying, wudu? Because these aren't intangible actions or things. They're things that you have to do.
Yeah.
So there's a reason why you do these things. And I can tell you, if it was just about, I'm a Muslim, I believe in Islam, I can tell you for a fact, you can get very distracted, busy, occupied, and you can almost go, I haven't prayed Dhuhr. Oh my God. Phew, alhamdulillah. And you go and pray.
Mm-hmm.
But imagine if you didn't have to pray.
Yeah, you become very dunyafied. That's what I call it, right?
Yeah.
And in the Quran, it always says, and if you go through any passage, and I don't know if someone may correct me if I'm wrong, but it always says, those who believe and do good.
Yeah.
Do.
Yeah, Amilu Solihat.
Yeah, there's a doing. It's not just,
yes.
Those who believe you're okay.
Yeah.
It's believe and do good.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. Yeah.
So straight away, you're like, well, you can't just believe.
And it's
good,
funny because in the Bible it tells you belief without deeds or actions are fruitless.
That's exactly
It's
it.
no benefit to you.
Exactly
Will not
that.
benefit you.
Exactly.
Deeds without, belief without deeds without actions. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, yeah, man. So, that young man asking me that question out of the blue, and I paused, and I gave him an honest answer, and I had to reflect, and it was a case of, well, have I changed? And I'll give you an example, and I don't think I've said this before yet. So, after I became Muslim, we were still living in the same neighbourhood, same house, going to the same shops, bumping into the same neighbours, friends, and everyone else that we would normally see. And I remember it must have been about maybe 4 weeks after I became Muslim, a girl that I used to know and was close to, I think she must have heard through the grapevine, he's become Muslim. So then somehow we got in touch, and it was summertime, and she came over, and we were sitting outside my house. We have the bay windows. So we were sitting on the kind of window ledge outside my house, just chilling, talking, catching up, because we hadn't seen each other in almost a month. And talking, and evening ended, she went home, whatever. Then I think we met again, same situation, outside my house, sitting down, maybe the next week or whatever it was, and talking, and then she said something. She said, and I didn't expect it, she said, you know what? You've changed so much. And I'm like, really? And she's like, yeah. And she's half Italian, half English. So she's like, you've changed so much. I'm like, how? And she's like, well, first of all, she said, you used to swear all the time.
Okay.
She said, and I looked at her and I'm like, seriously? She's like, I'm not lying. She said almost every sentence or other sentence, you'd say some kind of swear word. It was just the way you spoke. Nothing, you weren't trying to insult anyone, but it was just a part of your language. You had the odd cuss word that would come out in sentences. And I'm like, seriously? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, wow. I never even, it just never registered that I had stopped swearing, because I became Muslim and I just received all this new information, and it was like swearing was just not a part of that world.
Yeah.
And so it just literally, unconsciously, subconsciously, it just filtered out. I just stopped needing to swear, because I had better ways of expressing myself, and what I was learning as well was just mind-blowing. You know what I'm saying? So when she said that, I didn't notice it, but it was one of the most significant things that she noticed about me, that how is it possible that, she'd known me for about 3 years. So she was like, how is it possible that I've known you for all these years, and this is how you speak. This is who you are. Never changed. And I disappear for 4 weeks. I come back and
and he totally changed.
What's going on? She couldn't believe it. She was like, I cannot believe that you don't swear anymore. She was shocked. So this is the effect that I believe Islam had on me, because there was nothing else new or different that had come into my life at that time. So it wasn't like I had some new friends and they were the ones that were saying to me, you know, you swear too much. It wasn't even conscious. No one, when I became Muslim, no one said to me, bruv, you know you swear a lot. And I was like, oh wow, do I? Oh, astaghfirullah, I have to control that. Nothing. It just evaporated, gone. Even I didn't notice it. It took someone else to tell me, wow, where's the swearing gone?
It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
You see, there was these things. I kind of class them as mini miracles, right?
Yeah.
They are,
Yeah.
but only if you recognise them.
Yeah. Yeah.
But as that,
Yeah.
like if you think to yourself, no one told you about swearing, and it's probably like a law of attraction kind of thing as well. You're in a different environment, like you said, that environment doesn't require swearing, so you're not going to swear naturally. But at the same time, some people make conscious decisions about these things to try and better themselves, but it's very rare that it's just a subconscious thing, and it just changes for yourself.
I didn't, when she told me I used to swear, I didn't even remember that I used to swear. I was like, did I really? I was like, you sure? And she was like, yes, all the time. And I'm like, oh my God. And I would swear in front of you. She's like, yes. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm so embarrassed. And she's like, but you don't swear anymore. And I'm just like, well, I'm Muslim now, isn't it? So
Yes.
for me, it was just, it wasn't like, wow. I was just surprised that she'd noticed it.
Yeah.
But then when I thought about it after, I was like, damn, where did that go? It just was gone.
It's disappeared.
You know?
And that's something, when I was speaking about my friend before, Radzi, when he listened to the first show with me and my dad, obviously he knew me from when I was 11 years old. Yeah, high school. So for most of my life, pretty much I've known this guy. And then he mentioned, he said, in that conversation, he just saw a growth in me, and like something I didn't see, like it's just me. And he's saying, oh, you become really content. Your growth is there. You can see how you're just calm and you're happy with where you are. And in my head, I'm thinking, I'm just living my life, you know. But from the outsider's pointers, and when he was saying those things, I was like, you know, this is probably the best thing anyone has ever said to me, for me to realize that me doing what I'm doing within Islam and you know, carrying their faith forward is the right thing. Because if he's seeing that, and he believes in God, he's a Catholic and all those kind of things, but to see that, and I was like, you know, you just put a smile on your face and you're just like, that has reinforced everything that I've done for the past 4 or 5 years, trying to go back onto the deed. And then it's just good when you hear other people say it, especially people you don't know that see that very often.
And he is one of those people that he's at that kind of stage or station in society where he's quite successful. So when you have someone who's got to that kind of level, and they're mixing with different kinds of people, they've probably seen people that we would rarely see apart from on TV or in a program. He's probably mixed with them, sat done interviews with them. He's on TV. He's doing a snooker thing now, right?
Yeah.
So when you've got someone who he's living in that world where it's like success, you know, material success, as well as reputational success and fame, for him to actually look at you and recognise that clearly, and not be like, oh yeah, you look like you're okay.
Yeah.
It was more than that.
Exactly. It wasn't just you're doing well for yourself, you're okay. It was something that had a meaning towards my faith as well, and I was like, you just have to sit back. The amount of times I've kept repeating, because he sent it on WhatsApp as like a voice note, and I'll just keep listening to it, thinking, and I'd listen to it, and I'm like, has anyone else? And I'm thinking, wait a minute, why is he recognizing this to this such level? And the people around me, you know, they may recognize it, but no one's ever said it, and it was really strange.
I think also because of the circles he might mix in, he will see people who are doing very well from afar, and so he knows their reputation, he knows the success they've got, he knows the work they've done, whether it's film, television, radio, whatever. So he knows the personalities or he knows the personalities of those people, those successful people, or people that are, kind of getting there. And so I think when he looks at you and he sees your personality, he can associate it with that same thing. But he's thinking, okay, but you're not on the same path as those dudes, but yet I recognise the same traits in you. I recognise exactly the same thing. I see it when I hear you, when I look at you. I can see, wow, this guy's made it. You know what I'm saying? He's got all the characteristics about him of someone who's successful, who's made it. But yet, his focus, his drive hasn't been, I want to get famous, I want to be this, I want to get rich, I want to, you know what I'm saying? It's just, I'm Muslim. And that's the one kind of common, one thread that he can kind of go, you became Muslim, right? And now you're this. So he can recognise, and it's not because you've been to like life coaching classes with Tony Robbins or whatever it is. He can recognise that, wow, okay. So there's got to be something in this Islam. And even the discussion he said between you and your father, he could see. Yeah. Do you know what I'm saying? So
it's the power of Islam. I always say this. It's something that is given to us that it's a ridiculous blessing. When I think of it, when I think of Islam as and when people say, why me? And you're picking all the billions of people that I see in the world and you're driving around, and I thought to myself, if I drive to your house, right, and I look at every single person, I'm driving and I'm going to try and pick out every person in the car, and I say, what's the percentage of people who have faith in that point? And it's like, it's going to be a low number. Yeah. And I think, wow, so out of all those billions and billions of people, we've been blessed with this. Yeah. Yeah, and it's not to be taken lightly. So when I speak to other Muslims and they're kind of on their own journey, but I say, come on, listen, this is something that it's like giving life. You know, if I try and give the analogy of someone being born with no disabilities or anything like that. You've been gifted that way, and generally, you don't take it, take it for granted. Because at some point you might lose it, and then you're like, oh my gosh. And that's the same with Islam. I think if I was to lose Islam, if someone just said, no, that's it, you can't be a Muslim anymore. Wow. You'd be like, what? Yeah. What am I meant to do with my life now? One day I'm going to die. Yeah. And what do I have? The dunya? What I'm going to do, buy a car? What, you were going to give me $1 million? My dad mentioned one thing. He said, I don't know if I mentioned it on the radio show before, in terms of the senses that people have. We've been all given the senses. And he says, how much money could someone give you for your eyes, your eyesight? Yeah, and he was saying how you wouldn't swap it for anything. No. And I'm like, so why do you not have the same for the person who created you? When I reflect on things, it's like, we're lucky, very fortunate,
blessed, absolutely,
to have this. To have belief most of it, because you can have people who are, atheism is quite a new thing. Yeah. So you can have the belief in God, but then there's a lot of people trying to find what that means. Like Hamza last week, he did everything. It was like, he went through Buddhism, Hinduism, Sikhism, spirituality, all those different things, and he had weird experiences with that as well, where it's like when he was like a spiritual, whatever their thing is, where you sit down and put diamonds on your heads and stuff like that. And he said he would have like out of body experiences and things like that. Yeah, and he was like, this is ridiculous. How he would know something about someone, and they've never met them, and they'd like talk to them about, did you have this caravan in this color, blah blah blah, and he would know about that. And he said it was strange how he was on that part, and he even became Rastafarianism as well. Did that for a stint, but then he was like, when he found out that they choose the King James Bible, he was like, well, no, because the Bible has different versions, so he can't choose that. Yeah. But he's doing all of that, and I was like, whoa! So you literally went all the way around to everything, and then finalized on Islam. Yeah. So really, I should listen to. If anything, people should listen to you, because you've experienced all of them, and then you found Islam to be the one that has no contradiction, is truthful, and that's it. So it's like.
And it's interesting as well that sometimes people come to Islam, not always last, but sometimes it's the last one they look at, because maybe in the part of the world we've grown up and lived in, Islam is not something that was ever talked about when I was a kid at school. I had friends who I went into my class one day. It was half empty. In secondary school, half empty. I remember saying to the teacher, "Where's so-and-so, so-and-so, so-and-so?" The Asian kids, as I knew them. And he was like, "Oh, they're having their Christmas." And it wasn't until I became Muslim, years
Eid.
later, that I realised it was Eid.
Okay.
Because I'm thinking, they're lucky, they get 2 Christmases. They get their Christmas and our Christmas on the 25th of December. But they'd gone off for Eid.
See.
So there was no mention of Islam when I was in school that I can remember.
Okay.
None at all. And obviously now it's a bit different because you've got RE. But in RE, I do not remember hearing anything about Islam.
We did it quite a lot in high school. Yeah, we did it quite a lot.
Do not remember hearing anything about Islam.
Quite a lot.
Or nothing that made me believe it was on a par with Christianity or the Bible or anything like that.
So next show we'll speak more about the different religions, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah
Wa alaikum
wa barakatuh.